In the dim glow of a late-night diner, tech millionaire Marcus Reed made a promise that would shatter one woman's heart before she even knew his name. "I'll never fall for a poor white woman again," he declared, not knowing that Emma Carter, the tired waitress refilling his coffee, was about to become the exception that would destroy his carefully built walls. What Marcus didn't realize was that fate had already set the trap: a car crash in a dark alley, a grandfather's failing health, and a townhouse that would force them into each other's lives whether they wanted it or not. But when Marcus's prejudice collides with Emma's pride, and his bitter past threatens to poison their future, one of them will have to choose between protecting their heart and risking everything for love. The question isn't whether opposites attract. It's whether love can survive the very words that brought them together. If you're ready to see how this explosive love story unfolds, hit subscribe and tell me what city you're watching from. The rain drummed against the windows of the Sunrise Diner, like tiny fists demanding entry. Emma Carter tucked a loose strand of blonde hair behind her ear and refilled the coffee pot for what felt like the 100th time that night. The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m., and her feet already ached in her worn sneakers. "Table 6 needs more coffee," Cassie called from behind the counter, balancing 3 plates on her arm like she'd been born to it. At 40, Cassie Miller had been waitressing longer than Emma had been alive, and it showed in every smooth movement. Emma grabbed the pot and headed toward the corner booth where 3 people sat, huddled over laptops and papers. The man facing her was striking, tall with rich dark skin and the kind of sharp suit that probably cost more than she made in a month. His companions, a woman with natural hair styled in neat locks and an older white man with graying temples, looked equally polished. "More coffee?" Emma asked, forcing her tired voice to sound cheerful. The handsome man looked up and she caught her breath. His eyes were deep brown, intelligent, and rimmed with the kind of long lashes that made women jealous. But there was something guarded there, too, like a door that had been locked from the inside. "Please," he said, his voice rich and smooth. "Thank you." As Emma poured, she couldn't help but overhear their conversation. The woman with locks was speaking in low, urgent tones. "Marcus, you can't keep doing this to yourself. It's been 2 years." The man, Marcus, shook his head firmly. "I'm fine, Nia. Better than fine. I learned my lesson." "What lesson?" the older man asked, leaning forward. "That you can't trust anyone?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "I learned that I'll never fall for a poor white woman again. Ever. The last one nearly destroyed everything I'd worked for, and I won't make that mistake twice." The words hit Emma like a slap. Her hand trembled slightly as she finished pouring his coffee, and she prayed he hadn't noticed. Poor white woman. The phrase echoed in her head, each word sharp as broken glass. "That's a pretty harsh rule," the woman, Nia, said gently. "It's a smart rule," Marcus replied, his tone final. "Trust me on this one." Emma backed away from the table, her heart pounding. She didn't know why his words stung so much. She didn't even know this man. But something about the casual cruelty of his statement, the way he'd dismissed an entire group of people like her, made her chest tight with hurt and anger. She busied herself cleaning tables that didn't need cleaning, trying to shake off the feeling. So what if some rich guy had trust issues? It wasn't her problem. She had bigger things to worry about, like getting through her shift and getting home to check on Grandpa Hank. The trio at table 6 left shortly after midnight, the man named Marcus dropping a generous tip that Emma tried not to notice. She watched through the rain-streaked window as they climbed into a sleek black car that probably cost more than her yearly rent. "Earth to Emma," Cassie said, nudging her with an elbow. "You okay? You look like someone stepped on your cat." "I'm fine," Emma lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Rico, the night cook, poked his head through the kitchen window. "Those folks at 6 seem nice enough. Left a good tip, too." Emma didn't trust herself to say more. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of refilled coffee cups and wiped-down tables. When 6 a.m. finally arrived, Emma hung up her apron with relief and grabbed her worn canvas bag from the back office. "See you tomorrow night," Cassie called as Emma headed for the door. Emma waved and stepped out into the cool morning air. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean and sparkling. She walked the 6 blocks to the bus stop, her mind still turning over the stranger's words. I'll never fall for a poor white woman again. Well, good for him, she thought fiercely. She wasn't looking to fall for anyone anyway, rich or poor, black or white, or anything in between. She had responsibilities. She had Grandpa Hank to take care of, bills to pay, and a life to hold together one paycheck at a time. She didn't need some arrogant millionaire's approval. The bus ride to her apartment building took 20 minutes, giving Emma time to push thoughts of mysterious Marcus out of her head. By the time she climbed the 3 flights of stairs to apartment 3B, she'd almost succeeded in forgetting about him entirely. The key stuck in the lock, as it always did. Emma jiggled it patiently until she heard the familiar click. The apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, a tiny living room, and a kitchen barely big enough for one person. But it was home. "Grandpa?" she called softly, setting her bag down by the door. "In here, sweetheart," came the gruff reply from the living room. Emma found Hank Carter exactly where she'd left him the night before, in his old blue recliner, a cup of coffee cooling on the side table next to him. At 78, he was still handsome in a weathered way, with silver hair and kind blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. But the heart attack 6 months ago had slowed him down, and Emma worried about him constantly. "You're supposed to be sleeping," she said, dropping a kiss on top of his head. "Couldn't sleep. Arthritis was acting up." He studied her face with the sharp eyes that still missed nothing. "You look tired, Em, more than usual." "Just a long night." She perched on the arm of his chair, the way she'd been doing since she was 7 years old, and he'd first taken her and Liam in after their parents died. "Any trouble while I was gone?" "None to speak of. That boy next door was playing his music too loud again around 3, but it quieted down." Hank reached up to pat her hand. "You sure you're okay? You seem rattled." Emma hesitated. Hank had raised her to be honest, but she also didn't want to worry him with something as silly as a stranger's thoughtless comment. "Just some customer at the diner. Nothing important." Hank's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't push. He'd learned over the years that Emma would talk when she was ready, and not a moment before. "Well," he said instead. "Liam called around midnight. Said he'd stop by after work today." Emma nodded. Her younger brother worked at Murphy's garage across town, and his irregular hours meant they didn't see each other as often as she'd like. At 24, Liam was still figuring himself out, still carrying anger about their parents' death and their scramble to survive afterward. He loved Emma fiercely, but worried about her just as much as she worried about him. "I should get some sleep," Emma said, standing and stretching. "Wake me up if you need anything, okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Go rest." Emma kissed his forehead again and headed to her bedroom. It was barely big enough for a double bed and a small dresser, but the window faced east and caught the morning light beautifully. She changed into an old t-shirt and shorts, brushed her teeth, and fell into bed just as the sun began painting golden stripes across her floor. But sleep didn't come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus's face, heard his voice saying those cutting words. "I'll never fall for a poor white woman again." The casual certainty of it bothered her more than it should have. What had happened to make him so bitter? And why did she even care? She must have dozed eventually, because the next thing she knew, Liam's voice was pulling her back to consciousness. "Em, you awake?" Emma opened her eyes to find her brother standing in her doorway, still wearing his work coveralls with Murphy's Garage stitched over the pocket. His dark hair was mussed, and there was a smudge of grease on his cheek, but his green eyes, so like her own, were bright with concern. "What time is it?" she mumbled, struggling to sit up. "About 2. Sorry to wake you, but Hank said you seemed upset last night. Everything okay?" Emma rubbed her eyes and tried to shake off the grogginess. "Everything's fine, just tired." Liam crossed his arms, a gesture that reminded her painfully of their father. "Come on, Em, I know you better than that." She sighed and patted the edge of the bed. Liam sat down, his weight making the old mattress dip. "There was this customer at the diner last night. Some rich guy. He said some things that rubbed me the wrong way." "What kind of things?" Emma hesitated, then decided there was no point in sugarcoating it. "He said he'd never fall for a poor white woman again. Made it sound like we're all the same, like we're all just looking for a handout or something." Liam's expression darkened. Sounds like a real prince. It doesn't matter, Emma said quickly, seeing the anger building in her brother's eyes. I don't even know the guy. It's not like his opinion affects my life. But it hurts your feelings. A little, she admitted. I guess I'm just tired of people assuming they know everything about me based on how much money I have in my bank account. Liam was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You know, Em, not everyone's like that. There are decent people out there. I know. She bumped his shoulder with hers. You're one of them. I'm your brother. I don't count. His smile was gentle but sad. I just worry that you're closing yourself off from good things because of a few bad experiences. Emma wanted to tell him that she wasn't closing herself off from anything, that she was simply being realistic about her situation. She had responsibilities, obligations, people counting on her. Romance was a luxury she couldn't afford, especially with someone who'd already made it clear that women like her weren't worth his time. But before she could say any of that, a loud crash from the alley behind their building made them both jump. What the hell? Liam muttered, moving to the window. Emma followed him and peered out. In the narrow alley below, a sleek black car, the same one she'd seen at the diner, sat at an odd angle, its front bumper pressed against a dumpster. Steam rose from under the hood, and the driver's side door was open. Someone's having a bad day, Liam observed. Emma's heart sank as she recognized the figure standing beside the car, phone pressed to his ear. Even from 3 stories up, Marcus's frustrated body language was unmistakable. I know him, she said without thinking. Liam raised an eyebrow. The rich guy from the diner? Emma nodded, watching as Marcus paced beside his damaged car. He looked different in daylight, younger somehow and less intimidating. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and there was a small cut on his forehead that hadn't been there the night before. Looks like he needs help, Liam said casually. That's not our problem. Maybe not, but Mom always said, I know what Mom always said, Emma sighed, remembering their mother's gentle voice. Kindness doesn't cost anything, but it can change everything. Fine, but you're coming with me. They made their way downstairs and out the back door of the building. Marcus looked up as they approached, his phone call apparently finished. Up close, Emma could see that he was shaken, probably more than he wanted to admit. Are you okay? She asked, surprising herself with the question. Marcus stared at her for a moment, clearly trying to place her face. Then recognition dawned. You're the waitress from last night. Emma, she said, holding out her hand. This is my brother Liam. Marcus shook both their hands, his grip firm and warm. Marcus Reed. And yes, I'm fine. Just a little encounter with black ice. My car, on the other hand, he gestured helplessly at the steaming vehicle. Black ice in May? Liam asked skeptically. Marcus's mouth quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. Okay, fine. I was distracted and took the turn too fast. Happy? Emma found herself almost smiling back before she caught herself. This was the same man who'd casually dismissed her entire demographic the night before. She didn't owe him anything, but the cut on his forehead was bleeding more than it should, and he kept blinking like his vision might be blurry. You should get that looked at, she said, pointing to the cut. It's nothing. Head wounds bleed a lot, Liam added, even small ones. Marcus touched his forehead gingerly and looked surprised when his fingers came away bloody. I didn't even realize. There's a first aid kit upstairs, Emma heard herself saying. If you want. Marcus looked between them, clearly weighing his options. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen with a frown. My ride won't be here for another hour, he said finally, if you're sure it's not too much trouble. Emma almost laughed at the politeness of it. Here was a man who probably owned half the city, asking permission to accept basic human kindness from the kind of woman he'd sworn off forever. It's no trouble, she said, already regretting the invitation. They climbed the 3 flights in silence, Marcus moving carefully like someone who'd had his bell rung. Emma unlocked the apartment door and led them inside, acutely aware of how small and shabby everything must look to someone who clearly lived in a different world. Grandpa, she called, we have a visitor. Hank appeared in the living room doorway, taking in the situation with sharp eyes. What happened to you, son? Car accident, Marcus said simply. Nothing serious. Sit down before you fall down, Hank ordered, gesturing to the couch. Emma, Get the first aid kit. Emma retrieved the small white box from the bathroom cabinet, along with a clean washcloth and a bowl of warm water. When she returned, she found Hank and Marcus engaged in quiet conversation about the weather, of all things. This might sting a little, she warned, settling beside Marcus on the couch. He was very still as she cleaned the cut, his breathing careful and controlled. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the small scar just above his left eyebrow, the way his jaw tightened when she touched a tender spot. He smelled like expensive cologne and something else, coffee and rain and something uniquely him. "You're good at this," he said quietly. "Practice," Emma replied, concentrating on keeping her hands steady. "Liam was accident-prone when we were kids." "Still am," Liam called from the kitchen, where he was making coffee. "Remember when I tried to jump off the garage roof with a garbage bag parachute?" "That was last month," Emma said dryly, earning a surprised laugh from Marcus. The sound was warm and rich, and Emma felt an unwelcome flutter in her chest. This was dangerous territory. She finished cleaning the cut and applied a small bandage, trying to ignore the way Marcus's eyes followed her movements. "There," she said, pulling back. "You'll live." "Thank you." His voice was soft, sincere. "All of you. I know this is unexpected." Hank settled into his recliner with a grunt. "Unexpected doesn't mean unwelcome. Coffee? I'd like that." Liam appeared with 4 mismatched mugs on a tray, playing host with surprising grace. Emma watched Marcus accept the chipped blue mug, her favorite, and take a careful sip. "This is good," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "Emma makes the best coffee in 3 counties," Hank said proudly. "Secret's in the timing." An awkward silence fell. Emma could feel Marcus studying their small apartment, taking in the worn furniture and outdated appliances. Was he judging them, feeling sorry for them, or just biding his time until his ride arrived? "So," Liam said finally, "what do you do, Marcus?" "I run a tech company, software development mostly." Marcus's answer was carefully neutral. "What about you?" "Mechanic. I work at Murphy's Garage downtown." "Good honest work," Marcus said, and Emma was surprised to hear that he sounded like he meant it. They talked for a while about cars and engines, safe topics that didn't venture into anything too personal. Emma found herself relaxing despite her better judgment. When Marcus wasn't being imperious about poor women, he was actually quite charming. He listened when others spoke, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in Liam's stories about difficult repairs. When his phone rang, Emma felt an odd pang of disappointment. "My ride's here," Marcus said, standing carefully. "Thank you again for everything. I really can't express how much I appreciate your kindness." He shook hands with Hank and Liam again, then turned to Emma. "And thank you for the medical attention. You probably saved me from a concussion." "Just returning the favor," Emma said. "You left a good tip last night." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Embarrassment, maybe, or regret. "About last night. Some of the things I said—" "Don't worry about it," Emma cut him off. "It's none of my business." But Marcus didn't look satisfied with that response. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say more, then seemed to think better of it. "Well," he said finally, "thank you again." Emma walked him to the door, hyper-aware of the space between them in the narrow hallway. At the threshold, Marcus paused and looked back at her. "Emma," he said quietly, "I hope we meet again under better circumstances." Before she could respond, he was gone, disappearing down the stairs with surprising speed for someone who'd just been in a car accident. Emma closed the door and leaned against it, her heart doing strange things in her chest. This was ridiculous. She barely knew the man, and what she did know suggested they had nothing in common except geography. "Nice guy," Liam said from the living room. "You think so?" "Yeah, polite, good manners. Seemed genuinely grateful for the help." Liam paused. "Why? Don't you like him?" Emma joined him and Hank in the living room, curling up in the chair opposite Hank's recliner. "It's complicated." "How complicated can it be?" Hank asked gently. "You helped someone who needed help. He was grateful. Seems pretty straightforward to me." Emma wanted to explain about the previous night, about Marcus's casual dismissal of women like her. But somehow, sitting in their cozy living room after watching him interact so naturally with her family, those words seemed less important. Maybe he'd been having a bad day. Maybe he'd been hurt and was lashing out. Maybe there was more to the story than she'd heard. Or maybe she was making excuses for someone who'd shown his true colors the first time she met him. "I should get some sleep," she said instead of answering. "Work again tonight." "Emma," Hank said as she headed for her bedroom, "sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places." She paused in the doorway. "And sometimes a snake is just a snake, Grandpa." But as she settled back into bed, Emma couldn't shake the image of Marcus's surprised smile when Liam had made that joke about the parachute, or the careful way he'd listened to Hank's stories, or the genuine warmth in his voice when he'd thanked them. Maybe there was more to Marcus Reed than his cruel words suggested, or maybe she was setting herself up for disappointment by even thinking about it. Either way, Emma had a feeling she hadn't seen the last of him. In a city this size, paths had a way of crossing when you least expected it. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, pushing thoughts of dark eyes and warm laughter out of her mind. She had more important things to worry about than mysterious millionaires with trust issues. But as she drifted off, Emma couldn't help but wonder what had happened to make Marcus so certain that women like her couldn't be trusted. And despite everything, part of her wanted to prove him wrong. The afternoon sun slanted through her bedroom window, warm and golden, as Emma finally fell into an uneasy sleep. In her dreams, she was back at the diner, but this time when Marcus spoke his cruel words, she had the courage to tell him exactly what she thought of his prejudice. In her dreams, she wasn't afraid of rich men who looked at her like she was a problem to be solved. In her dreams, she was brave enough to fight back. But when she woke up for her evening shift, reality came flooding back. She was still Emma Carter, still working double shifts to make ends meet, still living paycheck to paycheck in a world that seemed designed to keep her there. And Marcus Reed was still a man who'd sworn never to fall for someone like her. The smart thing would be to forget about him entirely. The safe thing would be to stick to her own world and let him stick to his. But as Emma got ready for work, she couldn't shake the feeling that their story was just beginning. Whether that was a good thing or a disaster waiting to happen remained to be seen. Emma had convinced herself that the incident with Marcus was a fluke, a one-time crossing of paths that meant nothing. But life, it seemed, had other plans. 3 days after the car accident, she was walking home from the grocery store when she spotted a familiar figure standing outside Murphy's garage. Marcus was talking to Liam, both men gesturing at the open hood of a different car. This one, a modest silver sedan that had seen better days. Emma slowed her pace, torn between curiosity and the urge to turn around and take the long way home. Before she could decide, Liam spotted her and waved. "Em, come here a second." Trapped, Emma approached the garage. Marcus looked up as she drew near, and she caught the flash of something. Pleasure, relief, in his dark eyes before his expression became carefully neutral. "Hey," she said, shifting the grocery bags in her arms. "What's going on?" "Mr. Reed here needs some work done on his car," Liam explained. "Nothing fancy, just an oil change and tire rotation. But he was asking about you." Emma's eyebrows shot up. "About me?" Marcus cleared his throat, looking almost embarrassed. "I wanted to thank you properly for the other day. Maybe take you to dinner?" The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Emma was acutely aware of Liam watching the exchange with barely concealed interest. "That's not necessary," she said carefully. "I told you, just returning the favor." "I know what you told me." Marcus stepped closer, and Emma caught that same scent from before, cologne and coffee and something uniquely him. "But I'd still like to thank you, if you're interested." Emma's mind raced. Part of her wanted to say yes, wanted to see where this unexpected invitation might lead. But the other part, the smart, cautious part that had kept her safe all these years, remembered his words from the diner. Poor white woman. The casual certainty that people like her weren't worth his time. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said finally. Marcus's face fell, just for a moment, before the careful mask slipped back into place. "I understand." "Do you?" The words came out sharper than Emma intended. "Because I'm not sure you do." Liam stepped between them, sensing trouble. "Hey, maybe we should—" "It's fine," Emma said, not taking her eyes off Marcus. "I need to get these groceries home anyway." She turned to leave, but Marcus's voice stopped her. "Emma, wait." She looked back and the expression on his face caught her off guard. He looked lost, uncertain in a way that seemed foreign to someone who clearly had the world at his fingertips. "I said something the other night," he said quietly. "At the diner. I think you heard it." Emma's chest tightened, so he did remember. "It doesn't matter." "It does matter, because it was wrong and cruel, and I've been thinking about it ever since." Liam was looking between them with growing understanding. "I'm going to go check on something in the shop," he said, disappearing tactfully into the garage. Now it was just Emma and Marcus standing in the late afternoon sunshine with the weight of unspoken words between them. "Why?" Emma asked. "What made you say something like that?" Marcus ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking older than his 32 years. "It's a long story. I've got time." He studied her face for a long moment, as if trying to decide how much to reveal. Finally, he said, "Her name was Ashley. We were engaged." Emma waited, sensing there was more. "She was charming, beautiful, said all the right things about not caring about money, about loving me for who I was." Marcus's voice was bitter. "Turned out she'd been selling stories to tabloids the whole time we were together. Private things, family things, made me look like a fool." "I'm sorry," Emma said, and meant it. "That must have been terrible." "The worst part wasn't even the betrayal," Marcus continued. "It was realizing how stupid I'd been, how I'd let myself believe that someone could love me without wanting something from me." Emma felt a stab of sympathy for him, quickly followed by a surge of anger. "So you decided that all poor white women are the same?" Marcus had the grace to look ashamed. "I was hurt, angry. I made a rule that I thought would protect me. And how's that working out for you?" "Not well," he admitted, "especially since I met you." The words hit Emma like a small electric shock. She stared at him, searching his face for signs of manipulation or false charm, but all she saw was honesty, raw and uncomfortable. "Marcus," she said carefully, "I'm not looking for a project, and I'm definitely not looking to be someone's exception to a rule." I know that's how it sounds." He stepped closer, his voice earnest. "But what if it's not about exceptions? What if it's about realizing the rule was wrong in the first place?" Before Emma could respond, Liam emerged from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. "Your car's ready, Mr. Reed. Oil changed, tires rotated, should be good for another 5,000 miles. Marcus thanked him and paid the bill, adding a generous tip that made Liam's eyes widen. Then he turned back to Emma. "Think about dinner," he said quietly. "Please." Emma watched him drive away, her emotions in turmoil. Part of her wanted to dismiss his explanation as just another rich man's sob story, but the pain in his voice had sounded real, and the way he'd looked at her, like she was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve, made her chest flutter with dangerous possibilities. "That was interesting," Liam said, appearing at her elbow. "It was nothing. Didn't look like nothing to me." Liam studied her face with the same sharp perception Grandpa Hank had passed down to both of them. "He likes you. He doesn't even know me." "Maybe that's the point." Liam picked up one of her grocery bags, falling into step beside her as they headed home. "When's the last time you went on a date, Em?" "I don't have time for dates." "When's the last time you did something just for yourself?" Emma stopped walking. "Liam, what are you getting at?" "I'm getting at the fact that you've spent the last 6 months taking care of everyone but yourself. Maybe it's time to let someone take care of you for a change." "And you think that someone should be a rich guy who has a prejudice against women like me?" "I think that someone should be whoever makes you smile the way you did when you were bandaging his head." Emma stared at her younger brother, surprised by his insight. "I wasn't smiling." "Yeah, you were. You just didn't realize it." That evening, Emma found herself distracted during her shift at the diner. She kept glancing at table 6, half expecting to see Marcus there with his laptop and his colleagues. But the booth remained empty, occupied by different customers who wanted nothing more than coffee and pie. "You're jumpier than a cat in a thunderstorm," Cassie observed around 11 p.m. "What's eating at you?" Emma hesitated, then found herself spilling the whole story. Marcus's original comment, the car accident, his dinner invitation, and his explanation about his ex-fiancée. Cassie listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. When Emma finished, her friend was quiet for a long moment. So let me get this straight, Cassie said finally. Good-looking, successful guy admits he was wrong, apologizes for being a jerk, and asks you to dinner. And you said no. It's complicated. Honey, it's only complicated if you make it complicated. Cassie refilled the coffee pot with practiced efficiency. Look, I'm not saying you should marry the man, but one dinner never hurt anyone. What if he's just looking for who? Some kind of redemption project? What if he wants to prove to himself that he's not prejudiced by dating the first poor white woman who will say yes? What if he genuinely likes you? The question hung in the air as Emma went back to work, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. What if Marcus did genuinely like her? What if his interest wasn't about proving something to himself or assuaging his guilt, but simply because he found her attractive, interesting, worth spending time with? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Emma was getting ready for bed when someone knocked on the apartment door, not the usual quick rap of a neighbor or delivery person, but a careful, polite knock. She opened the door to find Marcus standing in the hallway, holding a small potted plant and looking uncertainly hopeful. "I brought this for your grandfather," he said before Emma could speak. "Liam mentioned he likes to sit by the window in the afternoons, and I thought—" He trailed off, seeming to realize how presumptuous the gesture might seem. Emma stared at the plant, a small jade succulent in a simple terracotta pot. It was thoughtful without being extravagant, practical without being impersonal. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I wanted to. May I come in?" Emma stepped aside and Marcus entered the small apartment. Hank was in his usual spot in the living room, reading the morning paper and sipping coffee. "Mr. Carter," Marcus said, approaching with the plant, "I brought you something. Liam mentioned you spend a lot of time by the window, and jade plants are supposed to bring good luck." Hank accepted the gift with a surprised smile. "Well, I'll be. That's mighty thoughtful of you, son. What's the occasion?" Marcus glanced at Emma, then back at Hank. "I was hoping to convince your granddaughter to have dinner with me. Thought I might have better luck with an ally." Hank's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Smart man. Emma's stubborn as her grandmother was, takes more than flowers and pretty words to win her over." "Grandpa," Emma protested, but there was no real heat in it. "What?" Hank said innocently. "I'm just saying the boy's got an uphill battle ahead of him." Marcus smiled, a real, unguarded expression that transformed his whole face. "I'm prepared for that." "Good," Hank said, settling the plant on his side table where it caught the morning light. "Because this one's worth the effort." Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Don't you two have anything better to talk about?" "Not really," Marcus said, his eyes finding hers. "Emma, I meant what I said yesterday. I was wrong about a lot of things. I'm not asking you to trust me completely or even to like me. I'm just asking for a chance to prove that I'm not the man you heard in that diner." Emma looked between him and her grandfather, feeling cornered, but not entirely unpleasantly so. Hank was watching her with knowing eyes, clearly enjoying the show. "One dinner," she said finally. "Somewhere public. Dutch treat." Marcus's smile widened. "Deal. How about tonight, after your shift? I don't get off until 6 a.m. Then breakfast it is. I know a place that serves the best pancakes in the city." Emma found herself almost smiling, despite her better judgment. "You eat breakfast at 6 a.m.? I do now." The way he said it, simple, matter of fact, like rearranging his entire schedule for her, was the most natural thing in the world, made Emma's heart skip a beat. "Okay," she said, "one breakfast, but I'm paying for my own food. If you insist." "I do." "Then it's a date." Marcus headed for the door, then paused. "Emma, thank you for giving me a chance." After he left, Hank chuckled and shook his head. "That boy's got it bad." "Got what bad?" "Don't play dumb with me, sweetheart. I raised you better than that." Emma sank into the chair across from him. "Grandpa, what if this is a mistake? What if he's just trying to prove something to himself?" "What if he's not?" Hank countered. "What if he's just a man who made a stupid comment when he was hurting, and now he's met someone who's making him rethink everything he thought he knew?" "You make it sound like a fairy tale." "Maybe it is. Or maybe it's just two people trying to figure each other out." Hank reached over and patted her hand. "Either way, you won't know unless you try." That night at the diner passed in a blur of nervous energy. Emma found herself checking the clock every few minutes, alternately dreading and anticipating 6 a.m. Cassie noticed her distraction and kept shooting her knowing looks, but mercifully didn't comment. When her shift finally ended, Emma hurried to the bathroom to check her appearance in the mirror. She'd changed into her one good pair of jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out her eyes. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she'd added a touch of lip gloss, nothing fancy but presentable. Marcus was waiting for her outside the diner, leaning against a different car, this one a more modest sedan that didn't scream wealth and privilege. He'd dressed down too, in dark jeans and a casual button-down shirt that made him look younger and more approachable. "Ready?" he asked as she approached. "Ready," Emma said, surprised to find that she meant it. The breakfast place turned out to be a small family-owned cafe a few blocks away, the kind of place that served coffee in heavy ceramic mugs and didn't bother with fancy decorations. Emma relaxed as soon as they walked in. "How did you find this place?" she asked as they settled into a booth by the window. "My dad used to bring me here when I was a kid," Marcus said. "Every Saturday morning, just the two of us. Best pancakes in the city, like I said." There was something wistful in his voice that made Emma look at him more closely. "Used to. He died 3 years ago. Heart attack. I'm sorry." Emma knew the pain of losing a parent, and her heart went out to him. "Were you close?" "Very close. He built the company from nothing, started in our garage, just him and a computer, and a dream to make software that would help small businesses compete with the big guys." Marcus smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. He never forgot where he came from, never let me forget it either. A middle-aged waitress appeared with a coffee pot and 2 cups. "Marcus Reed, as I live and breathe, haven't seen you in here for months." "Hey, Mrs. Chen, how's Jimmy doing?" "Good, good. Finally graduated from community college. Accounting degree, if you can believe it." Mrs. Chen beamed with maternal pride. "And who's this lovely young lady?" "This is Emma," Marcus said, and something in his tone made Emma look at him sharply. There was no hesitation, no embarrassment, just simple introduction. "Pleasure to meet you, dear. What can I get you folks?" They ordered pancakes for both of them, with bacon for Marcus and fresh fruit for Emma. As Mrs. Chen bustled away, Emma found herself studying Marcus's face. "You come here often?" she asked. "Used to. Not so much lately." He met her eyes across the table. "I guess I got caught up in trying to be someone I thought I should be instead of someone I actually was." "And who are you actually?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "I'm still figuring that out. But I know I'm not the bitter, prejudiced man you heard in the diner, or maybe I was for a while, but I don't want to be anymore." Their food arrived, and they ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The pancakes were indeed excellent, fluffy and light, with real maple syrup that tasted like it had come straight from Vermont. "Tell me about your family," Marcus said eventually. Emma hesitated. She wasn't used to people asking about her life, especially people who seemed genuinely interested in the answer. "There's not much to tell. Grandpa Hank raised me and Liam after our parents died in a car accident. I was 14. Liam was 11. That must have been hard. Hardest thing I've ever been through. But Hank, he kept us together, made sure we stayed in school, had what we needed, never once made us feel like we were a burden. He sounds like a good man." "The best?" Emma took a sip of coffee, gathering courage for the question she'd been wanting to ask. "What about your mother? Is she still alive?" Marcus nodded. "Very much so. Denise Reed, retired nurse, toughest woman you'll ever meet. She's protective, especially after what happened with Ashley." "Does she know about this? About breakfast?" Marcus met her eyes steadily. "I told her I was having breakfast with someone special. She'll probably want to meet you soon." The casual way he said it, someone special, made Emma's pulse quicken. "Don't you think that's moving a little fast?" "Maybe, but I believe in being honest about what I'm feeling." "And what are you feeling?" Marcus set down his fork and leaned forward slightly. "I'm feeling like I've been sleepwalking for the past 2 years and you woke me up." The words were simple, unadorned, but they hit Emma with unexpected force. She searched his face for signs of manipulation or practiced charm, but all she saw was sincerity. "Marcus," she said carefully, "I need you to understand something. I'm not looking for someone to rescue me. I don't need saving, and I don't want to be anyone's charity case. I know that. It's one of the things He stopped. as if catching himself before saying something too revealing. One of the things you— What? Marcus smiled ruefully. One of the things I admire about you. Your independence, your strength, the way you take care of everyone around you without expecting anything in return. Emma felt herself softening despite her best intentions. How can you admire qualities you've barely seen? Because I've been watching. The way you handled everything when I crashed into your alley. You didn't panic, didn't make it about drama. You just helped. And your family adores you. That kind of loyalty doesn't happen by accident. They finished breakfast in a more relaxed atmosphere, talking about safer topics, books they'd enjoyed, places they wanted to travel, childhood memories. Marcus told funny stories about learning to code as a teenager, while Emma shared tales of Liam's various misadventures and Hank's stubborn refusal to accept help with household tasks. When Mrs. Chen brought the check, both Emma and Marcus reached for it simultaneously. I said Dutch treat, Emma reminded him, and I said okay, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. They split the bill down to the penny, and Marcus walked Emma to the bus stop. As they waited for her ride to arrive, an awkward silence settled between them. Thank you, Emma said finally. For breakfast, for explaining about Ashley. I know that couldn't have been easy. Thank you for listening, for giving me a chance. The bus rounded the corner, and Emma felt an unexpected pang of disappointment that their time together was ending. Emma, Marcus said as she prepared to board, would you maybe want to do this again sometime? She paused on the first step, looking back at him. His expression was carefully neutral, but she could see the hope in his eyes. Maybe, she said, call me. As the bus pulled away, Emma caught a glimpse of Marcus's smile through the window, wide and genuine and absolutely devastating. She settled into her seat and tried to convince herself that the flutter in her chest was just the caffeine from the coffee. But deep down, she knew better. Marcus Reed was becoming dangerous to her peace of mind, and she wasn't sure she had the strength to resist whatever was building between them. The question was, did she even want to resist? By the time Emma reached home, she'd already started looking forward to his call, and that, she realized, might be the most dangerous development of all. 3 weeks later, Emma found herself in a place she'd never expected to be, standing in the elegant lobby of Marcus's downtown office building, feeling completely out of her element. The morning after their breakfast date, Marcus had called just as he'd promised. Then he'd called the next day, and the day after that. What started as brief conversations had gradually stretched into hour-long talks about everything and nothing. Emma found herself looking forward to those calls more than she cared to admit. Their second date had been lunch at a small Italian place near the diner. The third had been a movie, something light and funny that had them both laughing until their sides hurt. Each time, Marcus had been a perfect gentleman, walking her to the bus stop, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. But this morning had been different. Marcus had called with an unusual request. Could she help him organize his father's personal belongings? He was finally ready to sort through them, but the task felt overwhelming to tackle alone. I know it's a strange thing to ask, he'd said, his voice uncertain, but you're good with people, good with organizing things, and I trust you. The simple statement, I trust you, had hit Emma harder than any romantic declaration. So here she was, dressed in her best jeans and a clean sweater, waiting for Marcus to come down and get her. The elevator dinged, and Marcus appeared, looking relieved when he spotted her. Today he wore casual clothes too, khakis and a polo shirt that made him look younger and less intimidating. Thank you for coming, he said, pressing a brief kiss to her cheek. The gesture was so natural, so automatic, that Emma's heart skipped. I hope this won't be too depressing. It's fine, Emma assured him. Everyone needs help sometimes. They drove to a quiet residential neighborhood about 15 minutes from downtown. The house Marcus pulled up to was a modest 2-story brick colonial, well-maintained but clearly older. Nothing like the penthouse Emma had imagined him living in. This is it, Marcus said, sitting in the car for a moment before getting out. Dad's house. He left it to me, but I haven't been able to bring myself to really go through his things. Emma studied his profile, seeing the tension in his jaw. We can take our time. There's no rush. Inside, the house was clean, but had the stale, unused smell of a place where no one lived anymore. The furniture was comfortable rather than expensive. A worn leather couch, bookcases filled with technical manuals and mystery novels, family photos scattered on every surface. He never remarried after Mom died, Marcus explained, leading Emma into the living room. Said he'd had his great love and didn't need to look for another. Emma picked up a framed photo from the side table, a younger Marcus standing next to a tall, distinguished black man, with kind eyes and a warm smile. You look like him. People always said that. Same stubborn streak, too. Marcus's smile was sad. He would have liked you. How can you be sure? Because he always said the best people were the ones who helped others without expecting anything in return? Marcus met her eyes. That's you. They started in the study, a small room lined with bookshelves and dominated by an old oak desk. Marcus pulled out boxes while Emma sorted through papers, setting aside anything that looked important and creating piles for donation, storage, and disposal. Tell me about him, Emma said as they worked. What was he like? Marcus smiled, his hand stilling on a stack of old computer magazines. Brilliant. Funny. He could fix anything. Cars, computers, broken hearts. When I was 12 and got picked on at school for being a nerd, he taught me to code instead of trying to make me tougher. Smart man. The smartest. He started the company with $5,000 and a dream. By the time he died, we were worth $50 million. Marcus's voice grew quiet. But he never forgot where we came from. Never let success go to his head. Emma found herself studying Marcus as he talked, seeing past the successful businessman to the son who clearly missed his father deeply. Is that why you're successful? Because of him. Everything good about me comes from him, Marcus said simply. Everything I've achieved, every decent decision I've made, he taught me that. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Emma organizing and Marcus making decisions about what to keep. She was struck by how normal this felt, how right it seemed to be here helping him through something so personal and painful. Emma, Marcus said suddenly, looking up from a box of old photographs. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you say yes? To breakfast, to all of this. After what I said in the diner, you had every right to write me off completely. Emma set down the papers she'd been sorting and considered the question. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe because you apologized, maybe because you seemed genuinely sorry, or maybe because Grandpa Hank likes you. That's it? Emma smiled. Grandpa Hank is a good judge of character. If he thinks you're worth my time, you probably are. Marcus laughed, the sound warm and genuine. No pressure there. They were interrupted by the doorbell. Marcus frowned and went to answer it, returning with a woman Emma recognized from that first night at the diner, Naya, his business partner and best friend. Sorry to interrupt, Nia said, her eyes curious as they took in Emma. But we've got a situation at the office. Victor's trying to push through that acquisition without the proper due diligence, and the board meeting got moved up to tomorrow. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. Can't it wait until Monday? Not unless you want Victor to steamroll the whole deal? Nia's expression was apologetic, but firm. I tried to handle it myself, but he's insisting on talking to you directly. Emma could see the conflict on Marcus's face, duty warring with his desire to stay and finish what they'd started. Go, she said quietly. I can finish up here. I'm not leaving you to deal with this alone. It's fine, really. I'm good at organizing things, remember? Emma smiled. Besides, it's not like I'm going anywhere with your father's belongings. Marcus looked uncertain. Are you sure? Positive. Go handle your business. I'll be here when you get back. Nia watched this exchange with growing interest, her eyes moving between Emma and Marcus like she was seeing something that pleased her. This is Emma, Marcus said, making introductions. Emma, this is Nia Cole, my business partner and the person who keeps me sane. Pleasure to meet you, Nia said, shaking Emma's hand. Marcus has mentioned you. Has he? Emma glanced at Marcus, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. More than mentioned, Nia said with a grin. But don't worry, it's all been good things. After they left, Emma found herself alone in the quiet house with only her thoughts for company. She wandered through the rooms, getting a sense of the man who had raised Marcus. Everything spoke of someone who valued substance over flash, books well read, furniture chosen for comfort, photos photos that captured genuine moments rather than posed perfection. In the master bedroom, she found a cedar chest filled with Marcus's childhood mementos, report cards, art projects, photos from school events. One picture caught her attention. A young Marcus at what looked like a science fair, beaming proudly next to an elaborate project while his father's hand rested on his shoulder. Emma smiled, imagining the serious little boy Marcus must have been. Even at 12, his intelligence shone through his eyes, though there was a sweetness there that the adult Marcus sometimes hid behind his professional mask. She was so absorbed in the photos that she didn't hear the front door open. "Finding anything interesting?" Emma jumped, spinning around to find Marcus standing in the doorway. But something was different about his expression, harder, more guarded than it had been when he left. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to pry, I was just... It's fine." His voice was clipped, distant. "I told you to make yourself at home." Emma studied his face, sensing something had changed. "Is everything okay? How did the meeting go?" "Fine, handled." Marcus moved into the room but didn't come closer to her. "We should probably finish up here." The warmth that had characterized their morning together was gone, replaced by a politeness that felt like a wall between them. Emma couldn't figure out what had happened in the few hours he'd been gone, but clearly something had shifted. They worked for another hour in near silence, Marcus making quick decisions about his father's belongings without the careful consideration he'd shown before. Finally, Emma couldn't stand it anymore. "Marcus, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Something's obviously bothering you. You were fine when you left, and now you can barely look at me." Marcus stopped packing and turned to face her, his expression carefully neutral. "Victor made some comments about us. About you." Emma felt her stomach drop. "What kind of comments?" "The usual rich white man nonsense. Questions about your background, your motivations." Marcus's jaw tightened. "He seems to think you're after my money." "And what do you think?" The pause before Marcus answered told Emma everything she needed to know. It was only a few seconds, but in those seconds, she saw all his old fears and prejudices resurface, all the progress they'd made crumble. "I think Victor has a point about being careful," Marcus said finally. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. After everything they'd shared, all the conversations and growing trust, he was back to seeing her as a potential threat. "I see." Emma's voice was steady, but inside she was breaking. "So after 3 weeks of getting to know me, one conversation with your friend has you convinced I'm some kind of gold digger." "That's not what I said." "It's what you meant." Emma started gathering her things, moving toward the door. "You know what, Marcus? Victor's right about one thing. You should be careful, because the woman you're talking about, the one who's supposedly after your money, she doesn't exist. And the woman who does exist, the one who's been falling for you despite her better judgment, she's done being treated like a suspect." "Emma, wait." But Emma was already heading for the front door, her dignity intact even as her heart shattered. She'd been foolish to think that a few breakfast dates could overcome years of distrust and prejudice. She'd let herself hope, and hope had made her vulnerable. "I can catch the bus," she called over her shoulder. "Thanks for a lovely morning." She made it 3 blocks before the tears started. The next few days passed in a blur of work and forced normalcy. Emma threw herself into her shifts at the diner, picking up extra hours to keep her mind occupied. She didn't answer her phone when Marcus called, and he did call repeatedly. She deleted his voicemails without listening to them. "You're being stubborn," Cassie said on the 4th day, cornering Emma during her break. "Whatever fight you two had, it can't be worth this misery." "We didn't have a fight," Emma said tiredly. "We had a revelation. There's a difference." "Care to share this revelation?" Emma told her about the day at Marcus's father's house, about Victor's comments and Marcus's reaction. Cassie listened without interruption, her expression growing more sympathetic by the minute. "Honey," she said when Emma finished, "the man's been burned before. Can you blame him for being gun-shy?" "I can blame him. For lumping me in with every other woman who's ever hurt him." Emma's voice was fierce. "I can blame him for not knowing me well enough after 3 weeks to trust that I'm not some scheming gold digger. And if the situation were reversed, if someone warned you that Marcus might be using you for something, a tax write-off maybe, or to prove he's not racist, would you have doubts?" Emma started to say no, then stopped. Would she have doubts? After a lifetime of being judged by her economic status, of being made to feel like she wasn't good enough, would she be able to brush off concerns about Marcus's motives? Maybe, but that didn't make what he'd done okay. It doesn't matter, she said finally. He made his choice. He chose to listen to his friend's suspicions instead of trusting what he knew about me. And you're choosing to write him off instead of fighting for what you want. Emma stared at her friend. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe you're both scared. Maybe you're both looking for reasons to run before someone gets hurt. Cassie's expression was gentle but direct. And maybe you're both missing out on something good because you're too proud to be the first one to bend. That evening, Emma came home to find Liam and Hank deep in conversation at the kitchen table. They looked up as she entered, and something in their expressions made her wary. What's going on? Sit down, sweetheart, Hank said gently. Emma remained standing. Just tell me. Liam sighed. We got a notice today. The building's been sold. New owner wants us out by the end of the month. The words hit Emma like a punch to the gut. What do you mean, out? New owner wants to renovate, convert the apartments to condos, Hank explained. We've got 30 days to find a new place. Emma sank into the nearest chair, her mind racing. 30 days. In a market where decent, affordable apartments were scarce and waiting lists were months long, with Hank's medical needs and limited income, their options would be severely restricted. I'll figure something out, she said automatically. There have to be places available. Maybe something a little smaller or… Liam's voice was gentle. I already started looking. There's not much in our price range, and what there is… He shook his head. Nothing suitable for Hank. Emma felt panic rising in her chest. This couldn't be happening. Not now, not when everything else in her life was already falling apart. We'll make it work, she said fiercely. I can pick up more shifts, maybe find a weekend job. There has to be something. There is something, a familiar voice said from the doorway. Emma turned to see Marcus standing there, looking haggard and uncertain. Liam must have let him in, though when or why she couldn't imagine. What are you doing here? I came to apologize, and to help. Emma stood up, her back rigid. We don't need your help. Yes, you do. Marcus's voice was quiet, but firm. I own the townhouse next to my father's house. It's been sitting empty since I inherited it. You and your family can stay there as long as you need to. Absolutely not. Emma? No? Emma's voice was fierce. I told you I wouldn't be anyone's charity case. And I meant it. We'll figure something else out. This isn't charity. It's a fair exchange. The townhouse needs someone to live in it, to make sure it's maintained and secure. You need a place to live. It makes sense. It makes sense for you to assuage your guilty conscience, Emma shot back. Thanks, but no thanks. Marcus stepped further into the room, his expression pained. Emma, please, let me explain about the other day. There's nothing to explain. You showed me exactly where I stand with you. Message received. That's not… Marcus stopped, seemed to gather himself, then continued more quietly. You're right. I acted like a coward. I let Victor's paranoia get into my head, and I hurt you because I was scared. Scared of what? Of caring about you as much as I do, of the fact that you're becoming the most important person in my life. Marcus's voice broke slightly. I was scared because Ashley used to do things like this, help me with personal stuff, make herself indispensable. And when Victor pointed that out, all my old fears came flooding back. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. So you decided I was just like her? For about 5 minutes, yes. And it was the stupidest 5 minutes of my life. Marcus looked directly at her, his expression raw with regret. Emma, you are nothing like Ashley. Nothing. She helped me because she wanted something from me. You help people because that's who you are. And I should have known that. Emma wanted to forgive him. The pain in his voice, the genuine remorse in his eyes, made her want to cross the room and hold him until all the hurt went away. But she couldn't forget how easily his trust in her had crumbled, how quickly he'd reverted to seeing her as a threat. Maybe you should have known that, she said quietly. But you didn't. And that tells me everything I need to know about where this relationship was heading. It tells you that I'm human, that I make mistakes, that I've been hurt before, and sometimes I let that hurt cloud my judgment. Marcus stepped closer, his eyes pleading. It doesn't tell you anything about how I feel about you. Actually, it does. Emma's voice was steady, even though her heart was breaking. It tells me that when things get complicated, your first instinct is to doubt me, and I can't build something real with someone who sees me as a potential enemy. Silence fell over the kitchen. Hank and Liam had been watching the exchange like spectators at a tennis match, but now they seemed to sense that the conversation had reached a crucial point. "The townhouse offer stands," Marcus said finally. "Whatever is or isn't happening between us, your family shouldn't have to suffer for it." "We don't accept charity," Liam said firmly, speaking for the first time since Marcus arrived. "It's not charity," Marcus repeated. "It's a business arrangement. You'd be doing me a favor by keeping the place occupied and maintained." "What's the rent?" Hank asked quietly. Marcus hesitated. "We can work something out that's fair for everyone." "How much?" Emma pressed. "Does it matter? Whatever you're paying here." "It matters to me." Marcus named a figure that was exactly what they were currently paying for their cramped 3-story walk-up. Emma stared at him, knowing that a townhouse in that neighborhood would normally rent for at least 3 times that amount. "That's not market rate," she said. "It's what I'm willing to accept for long-term tenants who'll take good care of the property." Emma could see through the fiction, could see Marcus trying to help them while allowing her to keep her pride. Part of her was grateful. Part of her was furious that he thought he could fix everything with money and real estate. "I need time to think about it," she said finally. Marcus nodded. "Of course. But Emma, please don't let pride keep your grandfather from having a safe, comfortable place to live. Whatever you think of me, whatever I've done wrong, this is separate from that." After he left, the 3 of them sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Hank spoke. "He's right, about not letting pride get in the way of what's best for the family." "This isn't about pride," Emma protested. "This is about accepting help from someone who doesn't trust me." "Maybe," Liam said carefully. "Or maybe it's about accepting help from someone who made a mistake and is trying to make up for it." Emma looked at both of them. These 2 men who meant everything to her, who depended on her to make the right decisions for all of them. Hank's health wasn't getting any better, and the stress of moving to an unsuitable apartment could set him back months. Liam was trying to save money to eventually open his own garage, and higher rent would make that impossible. Her personal feelings about Marcus were a luxury she couldn't afford when their basic security was at stake. "Okay," she said quietly. "We'll take the townhouse, but it's a business arrangement, nothing more." Hank and Liam exchanged a look that suggested they didn't quite believe the "nothing more" part, but they were smart enough not to argue. That night, Emma called Marcus to accept his offer. The conversation was brief and businesslike, move-in date, logistics, practical details. But when she was about to hang up, Marcus's voice stopped her. "Emma, thank you for letting me help." "Don't thank me," she said softly. "Thank them. This is for Hank and Liam, not for you." "I know, but thank you anyway." After she hung up, Emma sat in her small bedroom and tried to figure out how her life had become so complicated. A month ago, her biggest worry had been covering the electric bill. Now she was moving into a townhouse owned by a man she was half in love with and completely furious at. Sometimes, she reflected, fate had a twisted sense of humor. But as she fell asleep that night, Emma couldn't shake the memory of Marcus's voice when he'd tried to explain his fear, the pain in his words when he'd talked about caring for her, the way he'd looked when she'd told him she couldn't trust someone who doubted her. Maybe Cassie was right. Maybe they were both too scared and too proud to fight for what they wanted, or maybe some things were just too broken to fix. Only time would tell which one was true. Moving into the townhouse was both a blessing and a torment for Emma. The place was beautiful. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a real kitchen with modern appliances, and a small backyard where Hank could sit in the sunshine. After years of cramped quarters and noisy neighbors, the space felt like a luxury they'd never dared to dream of. But everywhere Emma looked, she saw reminders of Marcus. His father's house was just next door, visible through the kitchen window. The garden had been recently tended, clearly by Marcus himself, and there were small touches throughout that spoke of his care and attention. "This is too much," Emma murmured on their first morning there, standing in the spacious living room while Hank settled into his new favorite chair by the front window. Sometimes too much is exactly what we need, Hank replied, watching her with knowing eyes. That boy did good, Em. Real good. That boy hurt me, Emma said quietly. Yes, he did. And you hurt him right back. Hank's voice was gentle but firm. The question is, are you both going to stay hurt, or are you going to figure out how to heal? Emma didn't have an answer for that. The first week in the townhouse passed quietly. Marcus kept his distance, though Emma sometimes caught glimpses of him coming and going from his father's house. He was clearly spending time there. The lights were often on in the evenings. But he never approached them, never used proximity as an excuse to push for conversation. Emma found herself missing him more than she cared to admit. She missed their long phone conversations, missed the way he listened when she talked about her day, missed the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her. But she also remembered the doubt in his voice, the way he'd pulled away when Victor planted seeds of suspicion. You're miserable, Cassie pointed out during their shift on Friday night. Absolutely miserable. And don't tell me it's just about the move, because I know happiness when I see it, and you were happy with that man. Happy doesn't matter if there's no trust, Emma replied, refilling coffee cups with mechanical precision. Trust can be rebuilt. Not if the foundation was never solid to begin with. Cassie studied her friend's face. Emma, can I ask you something? What are you really afraid of? I'm not afraid of anything. Bull, you're terrified, but not of Marcus using you or taking advantage of you. You're terrified of letting yourself love someone who might leave. Emma's hands stilled on the coffee pot. That's ridiculous. Is it? When's the last time you let yourself depend on anyone besides family? When's the last time you took a risk on someone? I took a risk on Marcus. Look how that turned out. You took a tiny risk. A few breakfast dates and some conversation. The moment things got complicated, you ran. Emma turned to face her friend, anger flashing in her eyes. He's the one who pulled away. He's the one who let his friend convince him I was some kind of gold digger. And the minute he realized he'd made a mistake, he tried to fix it. But you wouldn't let him. Cassie's voice was gentle but relentless. Honey, I know you've been taking care of yourself for a long time. I know trusting people feels dangerous, but sometimes the biggest risk is not taking any risks at all. That weekend brought an unexpected visitor to Emma's door. She opened it Saturday morning to find an elegant black woman in her late 50s, holding a covered dish and wearing a nervous smile. You must be Emma, the woman said. I'm Denise Reed, Marcus's mother. Emma's heart skipped. Mrs. Reed, please, come in. Denise stepped into the living room, her eyes taking in the cozy space with approval. What a lovely home. Marcus said you'd made it feel warm already. He's been here, just to check that everything was working properly. He didn't want to bother you, but he wanted to make sure the heat was adequate for your grandfather. Denise's smile was kind but searching. Speaking of whom, is Mr. Carter available? I brought him some of my famous banana bread. Hank appeared from the kitchen as if summoned, moving carefully but with dignity. Emma made introductions, and within minutes, Denise and Hank were deep in conversation about everything from the weather to their shared experiences caring for aging parents. Your grandson has excellent taste, Denise told Hank, glancing meaningfully at Emma. Marcus has told me so much about her. Has he? Emma asked, unable to keep the surprise out of her voice. Oh yes, he talks about you constantly, your kindness, your strength, your dedication to family. Denise's expression grew serious. He also told me how badly he messed things up. Emma shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Reed, you don't need to— Yes, I do. Denise's voice was firm but warm. Emma, may I speak plainly? At Emma's nod, Denise continued. My son is a good man, but he's been hurt badly. That Ashley woman, she did more than break his heart. She made him afraid to trust his own judgment about people. And when you're afraid like that, sometimes you make terrible decisions. Like assuming I'm just like her, Emma said quietly. Exactly like that. Denise reached over and took Emma's hand. But I've never seen him care about anyone the way he cares about you. And I've never seen him this miserable either. That tells me something important. What does it tell you? That whatever he's feeling for you is real. Real enough to scare him into sabotaging it. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. It doesn't matter how real his feelings are if he can't trust me. Can't? or hasn't learned how yet. Denise's grip on Emma's hand tightened slightly. Honey, trust isn't something you either have or don't have. It's something you build day by day, choice by choice, and sometimes you have to rebuild it after it gets broken. Before Emma could respond, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Nia, looking harried and apologetic. I'm sorry to bother you, she said when Emma answered the door. But I'm looking for Marcus. He's not answering his phone, and we have a crisis at work that needs his immediate attention. He's not here, Emma said. I haven't seen him in days. Nia frowned. His car's next door, but no one's answering. Emma felt a sudden spike of concern. Maybe he's just not hearing the doorbell? Maybe, or maybe he's... Nia trailed off, but her worried expression spoke volumes. What's wrong? Denise asked, appearing behind Emma. Marcus isn't answering his door or his phone, Nia explained, and he missed 2 important meetings yesterday, which isn't like him at all. Without thinking, Emma grabbed her jacket. I have a key to his father's house. He gave it to me in case of emergencies. They hurried next door, Emma's heart pounding with sudden fear. Marcus might have hurt her, might have made terrible choices, but the thought of something happening to him made her chest tight with panic. She unlocked the front door and called his name. No answer. They found him in the study, asleep at his father's old desk with his head pillowed on his arms. Empty coffee cups and food containers suggested he'd been there for days. Marcus, Emma said softly, touching his shoulder. He jerked awake, his eyes unfocused and confused. When he saw Emma, a complex mix of emotions crossed his face. Hope, pain, embarrassment. Emma, what are you doing here? Nia's been looking for you. You missed your meetings. Marcus rubbed his face, looking around the cluttered study as if seeing it for the first time. What day is it? Saturday, Nia said from the doorway. And the Peterson deal is falling apart because you weren't there to handle the negotiations. Oh, God! Marcus stood up too quickly and swayed slightly. How long have I been? Too long, Denise said firmly, pushing past Nia into the room. Marcus Reed, you look terrible. When's the last time you ate a real meal or showered? Marcus looked down at himself, wrinkled clothes, stubbled face, hair sticking up at odd angles. I've been working, trying to finish going through Dad's things. Emma looked around the study and realized that every box had been emptied, every drawer sorted through. Marcus had been systematically dismantling his father's life, piece by piece, probably using the task as a way to avoid dealing with his own emotions. This isn't working, she said quietly. This isn't processing your grief or solving anything. This is just hiding. Marcus's eyes met hers, and she saw such raw pain there that her anger began to crack around the edges. I don't know how to fix this, he said, and his voice was small, defeated. I don't know how to fix any of it. Start with a shower, Denise said practically. Then food. Then we'll figure out the rest. As Nia went to handle the work crisis and Denise bustled around making Marcus eat something, Emma found herself alone with him in the living room. He sat on his father's old couch, clean but still looking fragile, like someone recovering from a long illness. Thank you, he said quietly, for coming to check on me. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Emma settled into the chair across from him, maintaining physical distance but allowing herself to really look at him for the first time in weeks. Marcus, what happened? After Nia left that day, what changed? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. Victor didn't just make comments about you. He brought up Ashley, reminded me of all the ways she'd insinuated herself into my life, all the red flags I'd ignored because I wanted to believe she cared about me. And you saw those same red flags with me. For a few minutes, yes. You were in my father's house, going through his personal things, becoming part of something deeply important to me. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. And Victor asked if I was sure you weren't just playing a long game, earning my trust so you could take advantage later. Emma felt anger rise in her chest again. So you decided I was? No. Yes. I don't know. Marcus looked up at her, his eyes desperate. Emma, for 5 minutes I let myself doubt you. And in those 5 minutes, I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. And I've been trying to figure out how to live with that ever since. You could have tried talking to me, explaining what you were feeling instead of just shutting me out. I was afraid you'd never forgive me for doubting you at all. I was afraid that admitting I'd listened to Victor's paranoia would prove that you were right not to trust me. Emma studied his face, seeing the exhaustion and regret etched in every line. Marcus, do you still have doubts about my motives? No. The answer came without hesitation. No, Emma, I know exactly who you are. You're the woman who bandaged my head without knowing my name. You're the woman who splits every check and pays her own way because independence matters to you. You're the woman who works double shifts to take care of her grandfather and never complains about it. Then why didn't you fight for us? Why didn't you try harder to fix things? Marcus was quiet for so long that Emma thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I was afraid you'd realize you deserve better than someone who could doubt you at all. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. All this time, she'd thought his silence was about pride or stubbornness. She'd never considered that it might be about self-loathing. Marcus, she said gently, I never asked you to be perfect. I just asked you to trust me. I know, and I failed. Yes, you did, but failing once doesn't mean you'll fail forever. Marcus looked up at her, hope flickering in his eyes. What are you saying? Emma took a deep breath, feeling like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. I'm saying that maybe Cassie was right. Maybe we're both so scared of getting hurt that we're missing out on something good. Emma, let me finish. Emma leaned forward, her voice gaining strength. You hurt me, Marcus, really hurt me, and I don't know if I can go back to where we were before, but I also can't pretend that what we had didn't mean something. It meant everything to me. Then prove it. Emma's eyes were fierce with challenge and hope. Not with grand gestures or expensive gifts. Prove it by doing the work, by figuring out how to trust me even when other people plant doubts, by choosing us over your fears. Marcus was off the couch and kneeling in front of her chair before she could blink, taking her hands in his. Emma Carter, he said, his voice shaking with emotion, I love you. I love your strength and your stubbornness and the way you take care of everyone around you. I love that you make me want to be better than I am, and I swear to you, I will spend the rest of my life proving that I choose you over everything else. Emma felt tears spill over, running hot down her cheeks. Don't promise things you can't deliver. I'm not. Emma, I want to marry you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to help you take care of Hank and watch Liam open his garage and grow old with you in that townhouse. The words were everything Emma had dreamed of hearing, but they also terrified her. Marcus, we've known each other for 2 months, and half of that time we weren't even speaking. I know, and I know asking you to marry me right now is crazy, but I also know that I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Marcus's hands tightened on hers. I'm not asking you to say yes today. I'm asking you to give us another chance, to let me prove that I can be the man you deserve. Emma looked down at their joined hands, his dark skin against her pale fingers, strong and gentle and right. She thought about Cassie's words, about taking risks and trusting her heart. She thought about the past weeks of missing him, of lying awake at night wishing things could be different. Most of all, she thought about the man she'd fallen in love with, not the perfect version, but the real one, with all his flaws and fears and capacity for growth. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay, we can try again. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. If you doubt me again, if you let other people's fears become your fears, it's over. I won't go through this twice. You won't have to. Marcus brought her hands to his lips, pressing soft kisses to her knuckles. Emma, I swear to you. Don't swear, just do better. Marcus smiled through his own tears. I can do that. I will do that. Emma pulled her hands free and cupped his face, studying the features she'd memorized and missed so desperately. I love you too, you know. Even when I was furious with you, even when I wanted to never see you again, I loved you. Thank God, Marcus breathed, and then he was kissing her, soft and desperate and full of promise. When they broke apart, Emma rested her forehead against his. We're really doing this? If you'll have me. I'll have you. But I want to take things slow this time. Really get to know each other. No rushing into anything. Marcus nodded eagerly. Whatever you want, whatever you need. Good, because I have a list. Marcus laughed, the sound rich and joyful. Of course you do. What's on it? First, you're going to meet Liam properly. Not as the guy who owns our house, but as the man I'm dating. And you're going to win him over. Done. What else? You're going to take me on real dates. Not just breakfast or quick lunches. I want to see movies with you and go to dinner and maybe even dancing. I'd love nothing more. What else? Emma smiled, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. You're going to let me help you finish going through your father's things. Not because I'm good at organizing, but because I care about you and I want to be part of something that important to you. Marcus's eyes filled with fresh tears. Emma. And finally, she continued, you're going to introduce me to all your friends and colleagues as your girlfriend, not as the tenant or the waitress or the charity case, as the woman you love. I can do all of that, Marcus said solemnly, but I have one condition of my own. What's that? When I do eventually ask you to marry me, and I will ask, I want you to say yes because you can't imagine living without me, not because I've proven I'm worthy of you. Because, Emma, you've already proven you're worthy of everything good in this world. Emma felt her heart expand until it felt too big for her chest. I think I can manage that. They were interrupted by Denise clearing her throat from the doorway. I hate to break up this tender moment, but Hank is asking when you're coming home for dinner, Emma. And Marcus, you have about 6 hours to get ready for the board meeting you're going to attend tomorrow. Emma and Marcus looked at each other and burst into laughter, the kind of laughter that comes from relief and joy and the promise of new beginnings. Come to dinner with us, Emma said impulsively. Both of you. I think it's time our families got to know each other. Marcus's smile could have powered the entire city. I'd love that. As they walked back to the townhouse together, Marcus and Emma hand in hand, Denise chatting with Nia about everything and nothing, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Complete happiness, not the cautious contentment she'd built her life around, but true, reckless, wonderful joy. It wouldn't be easy, she knew. They'd have to work at trust, at communication, at building something real and lasting. There would be more doubts, more fears, more moments when the past tried to sabotage the future. But as Marcus squeezed her hand and smiled down at her like she was the most precious thing in his world, Emma knew they'd figure it out together. After all, the best love stories weren't about perfect people finding each other. They were about imperfect people choosing each other, again and again, until choosing became as natural as breathing. And that evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Marcus helping Hank with seconds while Denise and Liam discovered a shared love of old movies, Emma realized that sometimes the most beautiful thing about a love story wasn't the happy ending. It was the happy beginning. 6 months later, on a warm spring evening in the backyard of the townhouse that had become their first real home together, Marcus got down on one knee in front of Emma's entire family and asked her to be his wife. Emma said yes before he'd even finished the question. And in that moment, surrounded by the people they loved most, with string lights twinkling overhead and the future spread out before them like a gift, Emma knew that all the fear and doubt and pain had been worth it. Because some love stories are worth fighting for. And theirs was just beginning.